I'm Dr Matilda Greig, a historian here at the National Army Museum. I've been studying Napoleon for years, and I'm always really struck by how important objects are in the way we remember him. At the National Army Museum, we are the custodians of a number of fascinating objects that are relics from his life and promise us a tantalizing glimpse into who Napoleon really was, or how he wanted to appear. This is a marble bust of Napoleon. It is one of about 1,200 copies created to be placed in public buildings all over France during Napoleon's time as emperor, in much the same way as a king might order official portraits of himself to be hung up. Today, we tend to imagine a lot of different things about what Napoleon might have really looked like. We might picture him as one of the actors who's played him in a film, or think of him as a short, grumpy man in an oversized hat, even though historians now agree that he was probably a normal height for a man at the time. The stereotype that Napoleon was a small man has many possible explanations. One is that this is the way that British satirical cartoonists such as Gilray, Rowlandson and Cruikshank tended to depict him in their cartoons during the Napoleonic Wars. Gilray in particular is credited with inventing the character of Little Boney, a minuscule megalomaniac who diminished in each cartoon to the point of absurdity. I'm sure these cartoons made Napoleon angry. It's definitely not how he wanted to be seen by the world. You can tell this from this bust. The sculpture it's based on was Napoleon's preferred image of himself. It shows him in the style of a Roman emperor, a natural successor to Caesar and Charlemagne. More than 200 years after his death, we still depict Napoleon with a mix of respect and ridicule. He's still seen as one of Britain's greatest military opponents, and also someone that we love to make fun of. Napoleon actually gave out a lot of locks of his own hair during his lifetime. He even wrote in his will that bracelets should be made of his hair and given to his wife, his son, and his extended family. Giving hair as a gift was kind of a big deal in the 19th century, both in Britain and France. People gave each other locks of hair as tokens of love and friendship, or to commemorate the dead. After all, hair does not decompose. It was even a popular trend under Queen Victoria for women to wear jewellery made out of human hair and wire, from lockets to elaborate floral bracelets and brooches. The hair of an important or famous person could also be very valuable or desirable as a collector's item. It formed a tangible connection to that person, almost like a secular version of a religious relic in the Christian tradition. This piece of hair in particular comes from Napoleon's time in exile on St. Helena in 1817. He gave it to Captain Poppleton, one of the British officers stationed on the island, before Poppleton departed. It might have been a token of an unlikely friendship, two enemy soldiers thrown together under unusual circumstances, or one of the many ways in which Napoleon tried to make sure that people would remember him and his achievements. In this, at least, he succeeded. Locks of his hair are regularly sold at auction for thousands of pounds and kept in collections around the world. This is the skeleton of one of the most famous horses in history, Napoleon's horse, Marengo. It's a cliché of history that a great leader must also ride a great horse. The names of famous military commanders and their beloved steeds have often been tied together in memory. The Duke of Wellington and Copenhagen, Lord Roberts and Vonelelle, Alexander the Great and Bucephalus, and of course, Napoleon and Marengo. The reputation of a particularly brave, intelligent, heroic, or gentle horse also adds to the aura surrounding these leaders. It can also humanize them. If we hear that the Duke of Wellington really loved his horse, we immediately feel that we can understand him a little bit better. Napoleon was a very image-conscious man. He knew that to be painted astride a fearsome white stallion, such as in Jacques-Louis David's painting Napoleon Crossing the Alps, would help people imagine him as a great military leader. Marengo is often said to have been Napoleon's favourite horse. A white Arabian stallion, the legend has it that he was brought to France from Egypt following Napoleon's expedition to the Middle East. Named after the Battle of Marengo, he was reputedly wounded a number of times, but carried Napoleon through some of his most famous battles, from Austerlitz to Waterloo. The truth is, however, that Napoleon owned more than 1,000 horses, many of them very similar in appearance to Marengo. In fact, much of the legend built around Marengo as Napoleon's favourite horse has taken place in the 2 centuries after Napoleon's fall from power. We do know, however, that Marengo was with Napoleon at Waterloo. He was recovered from the battlefield by a British officer and brought back to London, where he was put on display to the public. Crowds massed to see and touch this horse who had been so close to the famous French emperor. Apparently, despite his warrior past, Marengo was so gentle that, quote, even the most timid lady could approach him without fear. Marengo then spent the rest of his life out of the spotlight, passing a peaceful retirement in the English countryside. When he died in 1832, his skeleton was sent to the London hospital to be articulated onto a mount. He's been on display almost constantly ever since. You can visit him today at the National Army Museum in our Conflict in Europe gallery, alongside a whole range of amazing Napoleonic-era objects. I suppose we'll never know exactly what Napoleon himself would have thought about what's happened to Marengo after Waterloo, but I think we can be reasonably certain that he'd be happy that both he and his horse are still in the spotlight.